The kindest man in the room is usually the first one sacrificed. Not because kindness is weak, but because everyone in that room already knows he won't fight back. Nietzsche said it plainer than anyone dared. What you call goodness is often just fear wearing a mask, and the world rewards those who can tell the difference. You have felt it. That moment when you gave way. Again, because it was easier than the conflict. You said yes when your body screamed no. You smiled through the insult because confrontation felt uglier than the wound itself. You told yourself this was maturity, this was grace, this was the high road. And maybe it was. But somewhere along that road, you noticed something you didn't want to admit. The people who took what they wanted, who spoke bluntly, who let others absorb the discomfort, they moved forward. And you stayed exactly where you were, praised for your patience, forgotten in the promotion, overlooked in the negotiation, taken for granted in the relationship. This isn't a story about becoming cruel. It's a story about a pattern so common it feels like gravity. You were taught that kindness is a virtue with no cost. Nobody told you it also functions as a signal to predators, opportunists, and even well-meaning people who will always take the path of least resistance. And you have made yourself that path. Every time you swallowed your anger to keep the peace, you taught the people around you that your peace was cheaper than theirs. Every time you apologized first, agreed first, backed down first, you trained your environment to expect it. And environments learn fast. They stop asking what you want. They stop imagining you might refuse. You become reliable in the worst possible sense, reliably absorbing cost, so no one else has to. The wound isn't that you're weak. The wound is that you built an identity around being agreeable, and now you don't know how to want things out loud. Nietzsche's answer wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was a diagnosis. He looked at what most people called good, humility, meekness, self-sacrifice, and asked an uncomfortable question. Good for whom? He argued that much of conventional morality was invented not by the strong, but by the weak as a survival strategy. If you cannot win by strength, you win by making strength look shameful. You call ambition arrogance. You call boundaries selfishness. You call refusal cruelty. And slowly, an entire culture starts punishing the very traits that would have let people rise, while rewarding the passivity that keeps them small. This is what he called slave morality, a value system built by those who lost, designed to make winning look ugly. And here's the part that should unsettle you. You have probably absorbed it without ever choosing it. You didn't decide that wanting more was distasteful. You were handed that belief generation after generation, dressed up as virtue. Nietzsche's alternative wasn't villainy. It was what he called the will to power. Not power over others in some cartoonish sense, but the refusal to shrink yourself to keep others comfortable. It was the demand that you stop outsourcing your worth to people who benefit from your silence. Plainly put, niceness that costs you everything isn't goodness. It's unexamined obedience. And obedience, however well-mannered, has never once been mistaken for strength by the people watching closely. The proof is everywhere once you know where to look. Consider a king who wanted, more than anything, to be loved by his people. A king so averse to conflict that he delayed every hard decision, forgave every betrayal, and softened every confrontation that might have saved his throne. While his enemies organized, he hesitated. While his advisors begged him to strike first, he chose patience, believing goodness would eventually be recognized and rewarded. It wasn't. He lost his crown, then his freedom, then his head, not because he was foolish, but because he mistook conflict avoidance for virtue in a moment that demanded neither. The lesson carved into that history is brutal in its simplicity. Mercy without leverage is not mercy. It's an invitation. Consider, too, an older story, a being of immense generosity who looked at humanity, cold and struggling in the dark, and gave them fire. Not because he was commanded to, because he could not bear their suffering. For that single act of unrequited kindness, he was chained to a rock, and each day a predator arrived to tear open his side, only for the wound to heal overnight so the punishment could begin again. He gave everything and received eternal agony in return, while the very gods he defied continued ruling from comfort. Suffering does not automatically earn reward. Sometimes it only earns repetition. And consider the archetype found in nearly every empire, every company, every court. The loyal second. The one who serves faithfully for decades, who never oversteps, who always defers to the one at the top, certain that devotion will eventually be recognized with a seat at the table. It almost never is. The throne goes to the one bold enough to reach for it, not the one patient enough to wait for permission. Loyalty without ambition isn't rewarded. It's relied upon. Here is the mechanism, stripped of sentiment. Every relationship, personal, professional, even familial, runs on an unspoken ledger of perceived cost. People calibrate how much they can take from you based on how much you've already let them take. This isn't malice. It's efficiency. Human beings, like every other social animal, conserve energy by pushing against the softest resistance available. If you have never pushed back, you become the default place where friction goes to disappear. Psychologists call part of this conflict avoidance. But the deeper driver is what happens to your nervous system every time you choose discomfort, now over confrontation later. You are quite literally training yourself and everyone around you through repetition. Compliance becomes muscle memory. And once a pattern is that deeply wired, breaking it feels physically like danger, even when the actual danger is staying the same. This is why the mental model matters. Think of every unspoken boundary as a tax rate. The lower your rate, the more people will spend from your account, not because they're evil, but because the price is right. Raise the rate, and some people will leave. The ones who remain were never there for the discount. So look at your own life without flinching. Where have you made yourself cheap in the name of being good? The friend who only calls when they need something. The employer who praises your dedication while paying you less than you're worth. The partner who knows you'll forgive almost anything if they simply wait you out. You didn't become their answer by accident. You became it through repetition, through 1,000 small surrenders that felt individually like nothing, but compounded into a reputation. And reputations are read instantly by everyone, whether you intended to broadcast them or not. This isn't a call to cruelty. It's a call to stop confusing your own disappearance with virtue. The next time you feel the old instinct to shrink, to smooth things over, to make yourself easy at your own expense, ask what it's actually costing you, and who benefits from you never asking. The world does not crown the kindest heart. It crowns the sharpest edge that still remembers how to hold something gently. Choose which one they meet first.